board requires a 2/3 vote. 2/3 of a seven-member board is 5. If only 5 members vote, the vote would have to be unanimous. Any decision on preliminary and definitive plans, approval not required, and proposed zoning amendments requires a majority vote of the full board. Any decision on scenic road permits requires a majority of the quorum present. Any person giving testimony must state and spell their name and provide their street address for the record. All questions from the public should be directed through the chair. This meeting is live and streamed on Sandwich Community Television's website and on local channel 9. This meeting is being recorded and will be available on SCTV website at www.sandwichtv.org tomorrow. According to town bylaw, meetings are audio recorded. If anyone intends to also record, kindly notify the chair. And thank you, Taylor, you did notify me that you were going to be recording. And if we could just please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'd like to introduce and welcome Steve Tucker, who is our new town planner. Steve started his role on February 10th. And Steve, if you want to give us your elevator speech.
Okay. Yeah, I'll keep it brief. I know we have a lot to talk about tonight, so I'm very happy to be here. I'm very grateful for the opportunity. My relevant experience started off in Barnstable working on natural resource issues for the Natural Resources Department in Sandy Neck. I went on to work for the Cape Cod Commission, our regional planning agency, for about 8 years, focusing on coastal issues, but also working with the planning projects going through their process. And most recently, I spent most of the last 5 years working with the Gulf Restore Council that's constantly discussing how to balance investments for natural resource restoration or protection with economic development. So I'm hoping that'll help provide some context for some work here in Sandwich. I'm looking forward to it.
Great, thank you very much. We're happy to have you. Welcome. So we'll move on to submission of new plans. Any new plans? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to old business. And the first item is the Lookout Ridge Cluster Subdivision for the purpose of requesting a partial release of surety. And I just did want to make a note that this is not a public hearing on this matter. And I have some comments to read into the record. The first comment is from Heather Gallant, Director of Public Health. The Health Department has no comment regarding this request. The second comment is from, I'm at that age, Paul Tilton and Sam Jensen, Paul Tilton, Director of Public Works, and Sam Jensen, Town Engineer. The Engineering Department has reviewed the subject request and offers the following for the board's consideration. It is the department's understanding that the subject surety was posted to support continuation of building construction after it was discovered that the Astrid Way retention basin was substantially altered without notification to the Engineering Department. The department became aware of this and other issues on June 2021. The supplemental surety was posted on or about November 2021, letter attached. Alterations to the basin noted by department included: fill was added within the drainage easement, increasing the elevation of the area surrounding the basin and the slopes, altering the shape of the basin. 2010 as-built of Astrid Way attached for reference. 2I, basin slopes and bottom were lined with boulders. B, issues with non-compliant erosion and sediment controls were noted at that time and have persisted throughout until just very recently. 2, restorative work on the Astrid Way retention basin was performed by the developer beginning later in 2021. This work was coordinated with the Engineering Department and staff periodically inspected. The November 2021 drainage basin improvement plan provided by the applicant with the subject surety request was prepared at that time along with an assessment by the applicant's engineer that the volume provided by the reconstructed basin exceeds that of the original design. It is noted that this 2021 plan does not depict the storm scepter filter structure that exists between the drain manhole and the retention basin. 3, inspection of the storm scepter filter units on both Astrid Way and Maxwell Lane revealed these to be full of sediment and in a failing state. The developer's contractor performed cleaning of these January 2024. Additional work is still needed on the Astrid Way unit. 4, since the most recent work on the Astrid Way retention basin was completed, performance has been substandard, resulting in flooding of the roadway on several occasions after runoff events far less than design parameters. 5, as noted above, erosion and sedimentation have plagued this site, particularly Astrid Way, throughout the course of development up until only recently when the last house was occupied. And final landscaping completed. This was largely the result of a lack of sufficient erosion and sedimentation controls, and this condition continued even after the restorative basin work was completed. It appears that cleaning of the drainage systems is needed. 6, the Lookout Ridge roadway maintenance schedule, stormwater operation and maintenance plan dated June 2004 and revised May 9, 2005 is attached. It appears that the provisions of this plan, particularly regarding the drainage components, have not been followed. It is recommended that the developer maintain the drainage and roadways in accordance with this plan until the homeowners association is established and takes control. Additional work items are noted in the attached Form I construction cost estimate dated November 5, 2024. 8, the department recommends that the developer's engineer inspect and evaluate the drainage systems, including the retention basins on both Astrid Way and Maxwell Lane, and provide a written report on the functionality and any maintenance or remedial work necessary to restore original design performance. Any recommended work should then be conducted by the developer under the supervision of their engineer and in close coordination with the engineering department. And with that, I will open the matter up to Sam Jensen.
Yes, thank you for reading that in. I would just add that Leanne Drake and I have met with Tom Mead, the principal of Lookout Ridge, the development, the owner entity for the development, as well as Mr. Snyder and the other gentleman that I'm trying to blank on right now. Thank you. And we met with them and we went over our different perspectives on the work and including the remaining work items. We left it at that time that that Mr. Mead would correspond back with us with a plan as far as how to tackle the remaining work items. We have not heard back regarding that. I've reached out but have not received any more correspondence up until this point with the surety release request. It's my viewpoint, as I noted in the memo, that there is work that still needs to be done in the subdivision, some of which is the drainage work. It seemed that, to me, pretty clear that there was quite a bit of erosion sedimentation that continued after the restorative work was done in the Astrid Way retention basin, and that needs to be addressed. And as I mentioned in the memorandum, my recommendation is for the developer's engineer to assess the situation, provide a work plan, and then for the developer to follow through with that in coordination with the engineering department.
Okay, thank you, Sam. And at this time, I'd like to open the matter up to the applicant.
Can I ask Sam a question first?
Sure.
Before we turn it over to the applicant? Thank you. Sam, you mentioned a meeting that you had, Leanne, met with 3 individuals. When was that meeting?
December 9th.
December 9th. Thank you. Thank you.
Is the applicant here? Okay. If you wouldn't mind coming up to the table here, so that the microphone can pick up your. Doing well, how are you?
Good.
You have the floor.
Okay, yeah, so I'm just requesting the money that I put into the surety bond. I'm not the developer.
You need to introduce yourself?
I'm Philip Schneider. I'm a builder that bought some lots off Lookout Ridge, so I'm not the developer. So what happened is the landscaper put some rocks in the retention basin. They saw it. I had to take them out. Excuse me, restored it to what was originally planned, and it doesn't seem to work properly, but that really wasn't my design. I just put it back the way it was supposed to be. Like Jensen, Sam said that Mr. Mead is supposed to get back to him with a plan. He's gonna fix it supposedly, but I'm just trying to get my money back out of there, that's all.
Okay. Anyone have any questions?
I have a question, before I have a question for you. And Steve, normally we would ask Leanne this question. I'm hoping, Sam, you might have the answer. So when a surety is put up, who is required to put it up? So
The developer, to allow continuation of either sale of lots or construction of homes with building permits, which was the case.
okay, so it's put up by the developer,
That's correct.
and you're not the developer, but you put it up. So why did this individual put it up and not the developer? Do you know?
I had to put it up,
did
I didn't put it up. I had to put it up because they were putting a stop on the permits. So in order to keep it going and keep the people happy, I put money up till I redid the retention basin.
And the cash surety was put in place to allow as the lots were already released. So normally the subdivision infrastructure is completed with the lots held in as surety themselves, right? But there's other forms of surety, including the cash form. And so the work had, going back some years now, the work of the subdivision had been completed to the point where there was a smaller amount of cash surety that was required, because the drainage was completed to a point that appeared to be satisfactory. It was functioning as far as our observations could tell, and there was a cash surety put in place at that time. I want to say in the order of $25,000 plus or minus. All right, and so then in the course of development of the building lots in more recent times, it became known to us that there were the modifications made to the Astrid Way retention basin, amongst other things. And we were concerned because the cash surety did not appear to be sufficient to cover the work that would be needed should the town be called in to fix the situation. So we worked with the building department and planning departments and arrived at the mutual agreement that the cash surety would be increased by this amount to allow continuation of the building construction. And so, as I understand it, Mr. Snyder did put that money up on behalf of the developer, and that allowed all the permits to continue.
Okay. The 40 that's in place is the only surety that remains?
There is still the balance plus interest on the $25,000.
And that was put up by the developer?
That, I believe, yes, was put up by the developer, the former developer, since passed.
Okay. All right.
Before the subdivision was sold.
Okay. And at the time that these sureties were put in place, there was a set of conditions put in place as to how they would be released.
Well, the conditions that are looked to are the standard conditions of the subdivision rules and regulations under the definitive plan.
Yeah, okay.
So when the work is complete, then the money can be released.
Okay, so the reason I asked that is just trying to get a background on what's in place. And the reason I asked you the question, and I apologize, I know the answers to some of these, but it's so that we're all level set, is that we always put conditions in place as to what has to be accomplished in order to get surety back. As you say, it's specified in the plans and so forth. And as I understand it, from Sam's memo and other information he's given us tonight, the work has not been done that's aligned with this surety. So
That's not true.
the work that was aligned with this, so when this surety was, and if I'm pronouncing it right, was put in place, there was a set of conditions.
Yep.
And you're saying that those conditions have all been met?
Yes. I was supposed to put it back in the order that it was, and that's exactly what I did. It's actually bigger and should work better than the one that was originally there. The other stuff that he's talking about that is not working is from the original design, is what I put it back to. I was told once I take the rocks out of there, put it back the way it was, I would get my money back.
Who told you that?
Him and the building commissioner, Brendan Bryans. That's why I gave
So
him
is that,
$4,000.
is that written down somewhere?
I didn't guarantee that it was gonna take a 100-year storm. I didn't ever write anything down like that or agree to that. I was agreed to that, put it back the way it was. It actually made it better than it was. So I don't know why I don't get my money back.
And what was the date that you did this
Wait,
work?
ask Sam a question. What's documented? As far, there's some understanding here that there were agreements reached.
My recollection is that my position at the time was to restore the functionality of the retention basin. Big part of that, though, is maintaining erosion control through the construction process, which did not happen after the restorative work was completed.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go in there and clean out the bottom of it when the spring rolls around to make it hopefully work proper. That's what we agreed upon in the meeting we had the other day with all three of us, four of us, five of us. Can't do it now because it's frozen,
No, I understand.
so. But again, I didn't create this design. I just put it back the way it was supposed to be. That's what I was told I was supposed to do.
There are other conditions, though, against the money. As Sam said,
other money
until
is-
the homeowners association's in place, the system has to be maintained or it's gonna fail because of sediment, erosion, other things happening to it. And if there's no money,
Well, there's $30,000 in there.
30 or 25,
25, it looks like.
oh, 25 plus.
I don't know the exact balance off the top of my head. There's been some interest on the original deposit.
It was 26,000 and some change. I have a question, Sam, about, oh, are you,
Well, I was gonna, just, while I was on this train, I apologize, I paused because I'm thinking. There's work to be completed and there's maintenance that has to happen. And it has to be done until the homeowners association is put in place. And there need to be sufficient funds held to cover that risk for the town. And currently, there's somewhere in the order of 65 to 70,000, depending upon so forth. Do we know, based upon the current conditions, Sam, and the cost, if the town had to go in, if the thing was left to fail again? It's one thing it gets cleaned up in the spring, but if it's left to fail again and the town has to go in, do you have a rough idea what that would cost the town, what the risk is to the town?
One of the items that are included in the packet that was provided to the board is a full-line construction cost. Between the two basins, the Astrid Way side, we had estimated at the time this was completed, it may cost over $32,000 for the Astrid Way, and then the Maxwell Lane side may cost $25,000. And that is just for restoration of the retention basins. There's a number of other work elements that if the town were asked to step in and finish it would have additional costs.
Okay, so putting aside who put the money up, the amount of money that's currently being held, is pretty aligned with the town's best estimate if they had to go in and do that work. And typically, we don't reduce surety below engineering's estimate. I mean, we rely on their expertise and wisdom and knowledge and experience in this kind of area. So I think that's a true statement. It's not like we're holding 100,000, there's only estimated 60 that's needed, and then we can let 40 go. We're right at where we need to be. Am I overstating it?
If anything, I'd say the surety is underfunded.
Underfunded. Yes. Okay. All right, thanks. That's all I have for questions. Thank you.
Sam, I was just hoping that you could maybe speak a little bit about the difference in what was presented to the building department for that retention basin in the initial plans versus when it was inspected, what was found. In your letter, you said it was substantially altered.
Yeah, and it has to do with the grading of the adjacent lot, because the retention basin on Astrid Way is located within a drainage easement that actually straddles two lots. Both of them were filled quite a bit to level the lots out, which is understandable. But then that changed the topography of the land adjacent to the retention basin around the boundary of the drainage easement, extending into it a little bit. That's one element that was changed. And then we found that there was boulders placed on the inside, the entirety of the Ashland Way Basin. Boulders, in our experience, are just problematic. They interfere with cleanouts that are necessary, and they're non-porous, and also interfere with the percolation rate of the infiltration basin. So that was a surprise to us. We had no idea that had been planned or the work was going to happen. So that had to be corrected. We didn't have survey at that time, but it appeared that the dimensions of the retention basin beyond just the fill and the boulders may have been changed as well. It looked like the storage volume might have been lessened. I can't say that for certain. Without having actual survey data on it. Afterwards, Mr. Snyder did oversee having the boulders removed and the material excavated out of the basin, quite a bit of material excavated out of the bottom and replaced with sand. That can oftentimes help restore infiltration rates, and then loamed and then hydroseeded, and that's been quite a bit of infiltration that's taken hold of. So those are all encouraging signs. And honestly, I was pretty surprised to then see the road flood again. But that very well may be due to just the lack of the erosion control sedimentation that happened. As the house lots were developed, there was an enormous amount of sediment that flowed off of the lots into the street and then into the retention basin.
Okay.
So this picture that was taken in January of '24 is after that additional work was done,
That's correct.
and it was still flooding.
Yeah, yes. I observed the road in a flooded state on 3 different occasions after the restorative work was done.
I have a question. Unless somebody else. What I wanted to ask about was the letter that we have in the package called Touchstone Capital Partners. That's part of that. It's addressed to you, and it's signed. And when I apologize for the folks on TV, it's addressed to PJ.
Yep.
And it's signed by Thomas Mead, and it's also signed by PJ. But the letter is to you. Yep. And it's an agreement defines an agreement and things that have to be done. Was this ever, Sam, do you know if this was ever shared with the town? And did the town ever respond to this?
The town made me write that letter. Because it had to go on his account, that was gonna come back to me once the work was done.
Yeah, I understand what, it states, and yeah, as you state, it's not signed by the town though, so I'm trying to understand, had the town seen it, did the town agree with it? That's what I'm trying to understand. Because as you said in here, it does define how the money will come back, but it's a letter between you and Thomas. The town didn't sign it, I'm not even, and that's what I'm trying to determine. Was the town aware of the letter? Did they have an opportunity to review the letter, and did they agree with it?
The town asked me to get that letter written between Tom and I.
If you're asking me, I was not part of the discussions and the development of that. Whether staff in the building department, planning department were at the time, I don't know. I became aware of this after it was completed and was submitted as part of correspondence just regarding the issues that are going on. To me, it seems that it has some relevance because it speaks to the agreement of how surety was supplemented.
I mean, looked at documentation, just asking the questions, we're in a situation where what's being held equals what's potential work the town might have to perform. And then we have this letter which says, the money actually is going to go back to TCB Lookout Ridge. It doesn't go to you, and then they pay it to you. But it says that will happen, upon completion of the Astrid drainage work. So the question is that work complete? And does maintenance of that until the homeowner association gets put in place, is that considered work? I'm trying to understand is, if this agreement's been met, then I understand your argument, which says, hey, I should be getting my money back. And I'm trying to understand if this agreement's been met.
But the last sentence in this letter, if the town requires any additional holdbacks or reserves in connection with Astrid drainage work, that will also be SC Construction's responsibility. And my understanding is we're not there yet. We don't have a finished project here at this point.
Right.
Is that correct?
There's a lot of work that's been done, but there's still some work to do.
Well, if it's still flooding, it's problematic.
Well, the question is the Astrid drainage work complete? That's the question, because as you stated, and as it says earlier, and it says in the last sentence, once that work's complete, if the town recognizes this agreement, and I still don't know if they do, because unfortunately Sam wasn't part of it, money would go back.
Is the work complete if it's still
that's the
flooding?
question. Well, as
Can I say
indicated, it could be a result of the design, not the
Right,
work.
so the work is done. If the design doesn't accept the amount of rain that falls nowadays, that's the designer from 2004's fault, not my fault. So back in the day, they only did them for 50-year storms, now it's a 100-year storm. So it's a little different rain than we get now. So whether it's not back, it's exactly, or it's actually bigger and should work better than the original design. And I
Yes,
have
that's the dilemma. It's
I have
not
an engineered
working.
letter here that says that it's bigger by X amount of volume, and I sent that to Sam, he has it as well. So I don't know why it doesn't work, that's really not my background, but I did put it back together the way it was supposed to be.
So is there you've put it back the way it was supposed to be, and then after you finished, was there a set of as-built done? That can then,
Yep, I have it here.
so they were done, I'm not talking about the original as-built, I'm
Yep,
talking about
this
the
is-
as-built,
this is
after
what's-
you finished your work.
This is what's in the ground right now.
So those are a set of as-built done by an engineer?
It's, yeah,
And those as-built comply with the design?
They're bigger than the design. It holds more volume than the original design, and I think it's 2 feet deeper, according to my engineer.
And there are other elements of the design, though, it's not just the size, you know, it's.
Yeah, we
It's
changed a whole bunch of
profiles,
stuff.
it's materials,
Yeah.
it's all kinds of things.
Right, we put a riprap swale here, a thing here, a berm here, so the runoff wouldn't go from that house. That was all proposed to Sam, and we're done. It's finished as we speak.
So we have a set of as-bills that reflect the work that you just completed.
Correct.
And the as-bills show that the basin has been returned to or better than the original design.
I have a letter that states that, yes, from the engineer.
And did we get that in the package, that
You
letter?
should have it, I would assume, no?
'Cause I don't recall seeing
Yeah, I
it.
don't
I
think
don't
we did.
recall seeing that.
So we'll need a copy of that.
Sure, you want this one?
Well, you can give it to the office and they'll get us copies.
Okay. Pretty sure I sent them to you, didn't I, Sam? No?
There was correspondence, I'm not sure if it was signed by an engineer, the actual letter itself. That may have been someone else in the office, but the plan itself was stamped by an engineer. It showed the altered retention basin. It's not so much that it was restored to its former state, which really can't happen now because of the altered grades of the surrounding properties. But it showed the new dimensions, that is correct. It also showed remedial work that had to happen around the perimeter of the retention basin. But as you mentioned, there's more to it than just simply the volume. The volume is an important factor, and that was something I wanted to make sure was looked at. And that volume, as I recall, was increased. And it appeared to be consistent with what I saw. There's also the infiltration rate, and then there's also maintenance of the subdivision after the restorative work was completed. And then the erosion, sedimentation that occurred afterwards may have degraded the infiltration rate.
Is it typical, Sam, for the surety to be done by the construction company as opposed to the developer?
No, not really. It's an unusual circumstance. It's really something that it's my first
So
experience.
Mr.
with something
Schneider
like that.
probably, I mean, it really should have been Mr. Mead that did the 40,000.
In a perfect world, I think that would be correct. However, my understanding of the operation was really we're just working with Mr. Snyder on any matters regarding Asher Way. Mr. Mead was not in the picture as far as regular communications whatsoever.
The other thing for clarity, and I understand the money came from BJ from you, but the way this is worded, the town actually gives it back to TCP Lookout Ridge. They give it back to Mr. Mead.
Yeah.
So it is in the structure that's been set up, even though the money originated with Mr. Snyder, it still is reflected as being from the
From the
developer,
developer.
which is consistent with the rules that we have in place. So,
Sorry, that's why the town made me write that, because I couldn't get it to you,
right,
back from you,
right.
without going
Right.
through him.
Yeah.
That's why that had to be done.
No, that's because that's where the rules are set. I have a question relative to next steps, and I don't know the answer, so I'm going to ask the question. There are documents that we as a board haven't seen that I would like to see. There's some additional analysis that engineering may want to do, or I'd like to understand a little bit more about the as-built as they compare to the design, not just the shape and size, but as you said, the infiltration rates and so forth. Can we continue this while we await those documents?
Yes. So what's before us tonight is to either determine if there should be a partial release. We can decide not to release it, or we can decide to continue it, and the next meeting that we would be able to discuss that at would be March 18th.
May I just,
Yes, absolutely.
yeah, regarding the analysis, engineering analysis, my recommendation is for the developer's engineer to conduct an analysis on.
Okay.
My analysis is that I've observed it not working in rainstorms that are below the design parameters. This subdivision was permitted under the 2004 subdivision rules and regulations, I believe, which at that time was the 25-year design threshold. That's 5.6 inches of rain in 24 hours. And we have not seen a rain event like that during this evaluation period. Nowhere, not even close. All of the rain events that flooded the road were substantially less. Given that the volumes are relatively consistent, it would have to be the infiltration rate that is not working. The source of that, though, is something that would probably take more investigative work, and that's something that the applicant's engineer should really do, and that's why I make my recommendation that way.
Well, I propose that we continue it until we get additional information.
Well, let's, before we do that, I was going to ask a question as to what additional information we're going to get, so that it's clear if we continue this, so, there's the as-built drawings, which are not part of our package, as I understand, I don't recall. There's a letter you have, and then, as Sam said,
Something from an engineer.
we haven't seen a rainfall event that surpasses what this was designed to, and yet the basins aren't working. And an analysis needs to be done. And Sam corrected me, rightly so. It really needs to be done by the developer. When you're going to need that analysis to understand what's going on.
So, again, I'm not the developer, I'm a
I know.
builder that you guys took money from to put the retention basin back the way it was. Whether it works or it doesn't work, that doesn't really have anything to do with me. It's not being the developer. Do you guys agree to that or no? If
We didn't take the money from you. Unfortunately, the way it's written.
Somebody did.
It's rightly so. The town took it from the developer.
Yeah.
I wrote him a check
I understand that.
to the town.
I understand.
Right.
But as the agreement's written, the money gets paid back to the developer because that's the way it
Correct.
has to work.
Right, 'cause that's the way the town works, right?
So the request is of the developer. We need from the developer in order to pay this back. We need to understand why the design isn't working. Which takes an analysis.
I understand that, but
Okay.
Sam, me, and the building commissioner had an agreement that is when I put it back the way it was, I get my money back. I didn't have an agreement that it was gonna work properly.
I understand, but we don't know if it's back to where it was because it's not working.
But it is back to where it was, because I have an as-built that says it is.
With respect to sediments that are in there and materials and filtration? and so
No,
on?
it's back to the way it was designed. That's all I was supposed to do. I wasn't supposed to make sure it works. It's the developer's issue, not mine. This is why I should have never given the money, and I should have just had to held on to the permits, and everybody in the whole neighborhood would have been mad at me. Because it was gonna hold up a couple houses, and they wouldn't have closed, and people would have been all up in arms. But being a nice guy, I gave the money to you guys, and now I can't get it back, which doesn't seem fair to anybody with some common sense. Whether it works or it doesn't work, I did what I was supposed to do. That's the bottom line.
I think maybe the gray area and the piece that's missing is the input from the developer. And, whether you aided him in the process by posting that bond. Because if he isn't providing what he is supposed to be providing for the subdivision plan, then the town is, we're here and we're having this conversation.
Right.
So, I guess maybe just for my own clarification, what is your relationship with the developer, and is he not willing to participate in this conversation?
No, he is. He's willing to do the work that needs to be done to get it to work properly.
Okay,
Sam, me, him, the other guy, John Barry, and Leanne. Leanne's her name, I think. All had a meeting. They all agreed that they want to do it, and we're just waiting for the springtime to get it done. We really can't do it now, so I guess maybe this meeting was a little premature.
okay.
But yeah, he's gonna do it. He's agreed to Sam to do it. Sam sent him a letter the other day. He didn't respond. I called him and he didn't respond to me either. But that's typical of him, not to respond. But he plans on trying to fix everything that he can to get it to work. Him and John Barry are gonna take care of most of the things.
Does anybody else have any questions for Sam or the applicant, or do we want to?
The meeting that you had, where that agreement was made, which was the December 8th meeting?
December 9th, correct.
That's good. December 9th, thank you. December 9th meeting, that agreement was made?
My recollection of that is that I made the recommendation that their engineer look at it and provide necessary steps. And that Mr. Mead indicated that he would be following up with us with an email detailing a work plan as to what the next steps would be to take care of the remaining work items. So we're just talking about drainage so far, but there's other work items that still need to be done.
I understand. But you went where I was going, which was, it's not yet documented.
No.
Because you haven't gotten the email yet. So we don't know, even though it's verbally been said, we don't have it yet in writing. And I think we need that. If we continue this meeting and not have that, we're just going to end up continuing again until we get that agreement to review. So my point is, if we continue to the 18th, will we have the agreement by then? And unfortunately, you're speaking for the developer because the developer's not here.
Right. I'm sure I can get it from him. So back to your question, I just bought some lots off Tom. That's how I'm involved in it. But he kind of just shoved the whole side of my way and said, take care of the street sign, take care of this. So I just did it, just to make things go smoothly. That's all.
Okay. Yeah, I understand your frustration,
Well, that's good.
but I guess the channel to me seems that it would be Mr. Mead that would be sitting in front of us and asking for that, and then distributing whatever the share is to whomever he is in business with. So
Yeah.
it's just a little difficult.
Yeah, like we're not asking for the whole thing back. There's gonna be some still in there. That's why he's probably not here. If he wanted the whole thing, he'd probably be here.
Yeah.
When
I
he's
mean,
done with all the work that he's supposedly gonna write up a letter to do, he'll probably be asking for
You
this.
see the position the town's
Yeah, sure.
we've been put in,
Yeah.
because it sounds like there's significant amount of work that still needs to be done. And
It's
That's
not
the
as
problem.
significant as you would think, but
And
yes.
the last home, the certificate of occupancy was issued in
A year ago, a little over a year ago, like a year and probably a month, maybe.
so
Year and 2 months.
2023, maybe
Yep.
end of 2023? Okay. So that's kind of another factor that's a little bit of a concern, is the amount of time that's gone by since the last certificate of occupancy was issued, and to still have Mr. Mead have some things that are lingering that need to be addressed.
Yeah, we just went over that at the December 8th or 9th meeting, so
Right,
we're all gonna
okay.
get tear in the springtime. We can't do any of them now. Someone's digging up the ground to bury some pipes. This is nothing we can do right now, so that's why it's not been done. Why he didn't write you the letter to state what he's gonna do, I don't know, but I'll follow up with him. I called him, like I said, he didn't answer.
so to go back to what you were saying, Jeff, do we need Mr. Mead at the next meeting so we can make a determination on this? We need some information from an engineer, an analysis that, from the developer, retaining an engineer to give us an analysis. I think there was another document that you have a copy of that we haven't seen. We need that. Are there other items that we need?
The as-built drawings and the letter from the engineer.
I think we got the as-built. I think. Isn't that it right there?
Looks like it.
Well, that's in 2021, so work was done in 2021, put it back where it was? So it's not the,
No.
it says November 2021, so I don't.
Oh, yeah, that looks like it.
Is this the as-built?
I think so, yeah. Trees on it
November
and stuff.
2021? What's the
be.
date on it?
Um,
I don't understand when the work was done.
yeah, this one says November 24th, 2021. Yeah, so it must have been done in 2021.
So it's been 3 years.
It might have been in 2022 because it's in November, so I might have did the work. I'm pretty sure I did it right away, though. I don't know exactly when it was, but
You couldn't have done the work afterwards if they're not as-built, then, because the as-built has to be done after the work's complete.
this could be,
Could that be the drainage
This might
basin
be the-
improvement plan?
yeah,
I
this
think
might,
it's just a
yeah, this
plan.
is a plan.
I don't think this is the
Oh,
as-built.
okay.
Yeah, this is a plan that I have.
The time, the dates don't line up.
So is that the as-built that you have?
No, this is the sending unit.
Yeah, I
Oh,
was
okay,
gonna say.
all right.
I think this is what I submitted to the engineer department to do. And that's what I did.
So, yeah, we have three options. We can release the surety, we can make a motion to not release the surety, or we can continue.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we continue it to the next meeting.
Okay.
Based on getting this additional information.
I'll say, you need to make one correction to that, and then I'll second it. Because when we continue, we have to give a date. You can't just say next meeting. I believe it's gonna be March 18th, and there's actually a meeting before that. So it's not the
Yeah,
next.
it's gonna
But
be.
we're not gonna have one in the beginning of March?
We won't have one, but Leanne won't have, Leanne will not be here on March 4th. She will be here on the 18th.
Right. But our
Just,
next meeting, I believe, is March 4th.
Yes.
Yeah.
just
So
for
you can't say.
just for clarification, I was asking sort of for a straw man to see where we were at before I asked for the
Sorry
motion.
about
That's
that.
I'm sorry,
okay.
she made a motion, I was just clarifying the motion.
Yeah. So,
Okay, straw man, I think we should continue.
okay.
I think we should continue it.
Okay, now I will ask for a motion to continue, and it would be to
March
March
18th.
18th at 6 PM.
I'd make a motion to continue this conversation until March 18th at 6 PM at the Sand Hill School.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstained? Okay,
Do we know, though, that we're gonna have all that documentation we need for that meeting?
I'll do my best to get it this week, yeah. Can I contact somebody if I cannot get it?
Yeah, you can get in touch with the planning department.
All right, so you need an as-built, a letter from the engineer, Tom's letter about the work that's gonna be done in the spring,
Right, and I'd like to see Mr. Mead at this table.
and bring Mr. Mead with me.
I don't know how the rest of you feel about that.
I think that is an important dynamic to this conversation, personally. I think it might be the most important dynamic to the conversation.
If he cannot make it, I'll let you know, we'll go to the next meeting, I guess, right? Are they every other week? Is that what's
Yeah, we have
typical?
two a month.
Okay.
What is
Sure.
the time frame
So what
for
will-
deciding?
Newsletter and all that.
Are we under a deadline?
Well, if we continue it to that date, we'd have to have the meeting on that date.
Yeah, I was just gonna make that clarification, so in the event the documentation's not ready, in the event Mr. Mead can't come, we will still have to meet, and we'll have to vote at that time to continue it again. We can't just give you
Gotcha.
another date at that time.
Okay,
We can't do it until the next time that we've now agreed to meet.
gotcha,
That's the way it works.
okay.
So, in the event you can't make it, and you can't have documentation, what we would want to know on the 18th is, okay, is it another 2 weeks? Is it a month?
Right,
And so we can set a date by which you could have everything.
sure,
Thank you.
seems easy enough.
All right, moving on to new business.
You're adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks.
New business being the proposed zoning amendment. This is a public hearing. And I would like to say that Leanne Drake, who is our Director of Community Development, has been really spearheading the town's involvement in this project, these zoning amendments, and she had planned to make a brief presentation tonight, and unfortunately, she's not able to be here. Given that, proposed zoning amendments, give me just a second, collect my notes. Should I read this into the record? Okay. The whole thing or just?
And start the initiative.
The planning board of the town of Sandwich hereby gives notice that it will hold a public hearing on proposed amendments to the Sandwich Protective Zoning Bylaw. Date and time February 18th, 6 p.m., Sand Hill School Community Center, 16 Dewey Ave, Sandwich, Mass. Proposed amendments. Proposed amendments to Article 4, Section 4130, accessory dwelling units for the purpose of complying with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts' Affordable Homes Act of 2024. Proposed amendment to Article 2, Section 2550, non-conforming lots for the purposes of complying, of complying with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Affordable Homes Act of 2024. Full text of the proposed zoning amendments along with the current protective zoning bylaw and current zoning map may be viewed in the following ways. You can request a PDF from the Office of Planning and Development at planning@sandwichmass.org. You can visit the Office of the Planning and Development Department at 100 Route 6A, Sandwich, Mass. Or you can call 508-833-8001 if other accommodations are needed. Let's see. Just looking at my notes, thank you. So at this time, I'll take a motion to open the public hearing.
I make a motion to open the public hearing on the proposed zoning amendments to Article 4, proposed amendments to Article 4, sections 4130, 4134, and 2550.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Should I open the floor to the board? To the board, okay, sorry.
Discussion.
Okay, so at this time, I'll open the discussion to the board. I believe that we've had the proposed amendments to, sorry, my touch screen is not working. The proposed zoning amendments were provided to us. Did everybody have an opportunity to review them? And are there any comments?
Well, I think that the biggest issue is allowing a second or more ADU. Are we discussing it?
No.
Okay.
Just apologize for the group that's here, in that, normally, because Leanne's not here, and Melissa's doing a great job, she's not, she's our vice chair, normally the chair could make it this evening. Normally, the planning board would present the zoning changes so that you would have an understanding of what they are. Then we as a board get to ask them questions about the amendment, make any comments that we have. And then we're going to open it up to you so you can provide comments. And if you want to provide comments, you'll have to come and introduce yourself, sit at the table, and you can make your comments. We have the opportunity to ask you questions. If you're open to that, we can do that. And then when that's completed, what we're going to do this evening is probably continue this because we're short individuals. There's only 4 of us here. There's 7 on the board. The head of the department's not here. She's out sick. Some other sicknesses going around, as you're aware. So we're probably going to continue this. We don't know. We have to vote on that, so I'm not saying we are. And normally we would have closed it and then deliberated on it and made a decision this evening. I don't think we're going to get there, but I don't want to speak for the rest of my board members. I'm not doing that. I'm just sharing with you the process. So right now, what the chair asked for was, based on what we were given to read, and this is not the first time we've looked at it, and then last week Leanne had a session at the Center for Active Living, and she did a great job of presenting this. If you happen to have a chance to be there. Do we have any further questions on the wording and what's here? And then we're going to open it up to you. So I don't have any questions or comments.
Okay, and just to be clear, this is just on the proposed amendment to Article 4, Section 4130, which would be exclusive of Section 4134, which is the second ADU. So if nobody has any board comments, I will open the matter up to the public if anybody has any comments about the amendment to Article 4, Section 4130.
This is your chance to talk. You want to come up and offer concerns, support?
We do want to hear from the community, so if you have thoughts on the changes that are being contemplated for ADUs, it would be helpful.
Nobody has anything to say now after sitting here through this long meeting? I do. So, yeah.
If you'd like to take a seat and state your name and your address.
Ellen Asack, 35 Billy Lane. So I've been watching it, and I watched the meeting with her. So I think you did a really good job. I understand all of the concerns that everybody's voiced, and even some of the public. But I'm here to speak to two specific things, and that is the purpose C, encouraging greater diversity of population and particularly attention to young adult citizens and to allow aging in place. And so that's important. And rentals are not the most important part of the ADU for that. It will help. So let's go over here though, so I'll make this quicker. One of the, when we get to E, 4133E, so you're putting in I understand the seasonal rental and I understand the concerns, about this. But no occupancy of the ADU is permitted other than by lease for a minimum of 12 consecutive months. That very unreasonably restricts this particular purpose in that it almost kind of nullifies it in that that's not always the case. I mean, think of an elderly person, or think if you're my age and then you're going to age, but you've created one of these ADUs. You've taken a bedroom out of your house, or you're taking a section of your house, you might have had an extra bedroom. You may want to move into the smaller unit and rent the other side. But you also may only want to move into the other unit and have a caregiver come so you don't have to go out and be taken care of. So home health care is a part of aging in place. And when we say that the unit has to be rented, rental's great because they'll get an income, we're thinking, when you really need it, or even if you're just my age or your age or anyone else's age, and you're handicapped or something happens, you need to be able to use it, the space that you have. And a lot of times that's not by rental. Now, you don't want to set up a situation where somebody has to make up a lease in order to occupy that space. So, I think about that. And then also with younger people moving, family. So, for instance, single, elderly male or husband or wife, one living in the house alone, they don't need this big house. It's going to be impossible to live with their kids and their grandchildren because it's just a big thing, to all come and live here. They've created an ADU, they've rented it in the past. It helped them get to this particular point. Now the kids need to come back to the house, live here with us. And so you can give them a space and you can stay in the other space, or vice versa. And it wouldn't necessarily require or even include a lease or an exchange of payments. It's a lease. I understand the reasoning behind it. And that is because you want to eliminate the short-term rentals and seasonal rentals. And of course, neighbors don't want to see people coming just for the summer and so on and so forth. But once you start saying that it needs to be a minimum of 12 consecutive months lease, you've eliminated that, and I would say that might be unreasonable, and almost nullify the purpose of this particular issue. So I would hope you would really think about that, because these are important. These are important. Young people and the elderly people that are actually living in the town. And a lot of parents nowadays let their kids stay with them, but they don't charge them rent. They're helping them to get on their feet, maybe a year or 2 years, so that they can afford to buy a house. So they're just staying with them. So, or they might have them come out when they get out of college, they come back and stay home. And even whole families have moved together. So we've changed. If we want to keep them here, we need to be, able to not just focus on the rental. It's great to make more rentals, but if we tie their hands and they've spent all this money creating an ADU, and especially if it's a part of their house. So, it's just another point of view. I don't think anybody mentioned. And then the other one is the idea, I know the controversy about the second ADU. It requires a special permit, so they got to come here. So you're going to, whoever's on the board is going to have a lot of input into that. And secondly, I don't
If I
know.
could interrupt you for just 1 second. That second ADU component is actually the second part of our meeting, so I do appreciate your comments on
Okay.
that.
Oh,
And
we're
you're
on the
being
second-
very
yeah,
efficient with your
Okay.
time.
Thanks. Okay.
And you don't have to get up and, but I did just want to point out that.
I know that, yeah. No, I'm
Yeah.
okay.
But no, thank you very much for your comments. And the proposed amendments that are before us now are coming from the state mandate, and what we have to do, and what Leanne has really been instrumental in doing is reviewing our own town bylaws to make sure that they match what the state is mandating. So a lot of the language is
not a part, no.
is like specific to what the state mandate has.
The
in
rental requirement is not a state mandate, that's added.
You mean the word lease?
The lease, yeah, and then it has to be rented for 12 months. There's no mandate of what needs to be done with the unit.
Okay, did anybody have any other comments on that matter?
Anybody else want to come up? And so we're talking about the proposed changes to section 4130. And as stated earlier, we currently have an ADU bylaw. We need to replace it with a new bylaw as the state passed a mandate, I don't call it mandate, but the state passed a law that ADUs, the first ADU, will be a by right. So they won't have to come before this board to get it. So that's what we're working through here. Any other comments? Come on up. Hearing from the audience.
It's more of a question.
You can ask questions.
I got a question and a comment.
Your name and where you live.
Sure. Ken Aguirre, 85 Greenville Drive.
Did you go to Northeastern?
Excuse me?
Did you go to Northeastern?
Yes.
So did I.
grade school. The question I have, and it seemed to be a topic, a popular concern at the first meeting, which I also attended, was the changes or so the discussion about what's included in the square footage. There have been earlier ADUs constructed in town, not that many, but a few, in which areas such as common hallways, pantries, porches are not included in the overall square footage. And there was some discussion at the event, I think it was the 14th or 15th?
Wednesday.
Right, Wednesday, right, where there was some discussion about potential changes to that future ADUs, that porches, pantries, common hallways will now be included in that, which will substantially shrink the size of the actual ADU. And I was wondering if, I know the director's not here tonight, but if the board could, even if they're not prepared to discuss that tonight, in its proposed continuance, maybe address that. I think that's a point of confusion, at least it is for me, and talking to some residents as we're exiting that meeting. I think clarification on that is definitely warranted, because there's some confusion on which direction the town is moving towards. Are we going to include those common areas or those pass-through areas in overall square footage? Or is it going to be maintained now as some of the ADUs that are either in the process of being constructed or very nearly completed? So that would be appreciated if a clarification could be given to that.
Okay, yeah, that's a great point, and I know
Can I-
that Leanne did go over that in the meeting on Wednesday.
Right.
And I believe the specific terminology in the state mandate was gross floor space. I might be wrong about that. But we do encourage you, if you want to reach out to Leanne via email, and she would be happy to provide you clarification on that. But you're right, it does deviate from what historically has been in the bylaw, as far as it being living space versus the gross square footage. Jeff?
If I could just offer clarification for you. So the state set the size, 900 square feet, and they set the definition. So it's gross floor space, as Melissa said. The current ADU that we have in place in Sandwich, which is no longer in effect because the state one went into effect on February 2nd, we must go before the town meeting in order to get ours replaced. We use what's called habitable space, and the items that you mentioned are not included in that measurement of square footage. However, the state chose not to use habitable space. They used gross square footage. So that's why those items are included. What Leanne explained last Wednesday was two things. One was maybe somewhere down the road, the state legislature will decide that that wasn't a good idea and maybe it'll change. That has not been suggested by the state. We don't know it's going to change. She was just speaking to what she thinks might happen. But as far as the by right ADU is currently set at 900, it's currently set at gross square footage. We have no control over that in the town. We have to accept that. The other thing she spoke to was what she called the ADU XL. You might remember she used that term. And what she was speaking to there was, if we choose, we can, and we'll speak to this on the next item, but I'll just for clarification speak to it here. If we choose to put in allow a second ADU by special permit, we could define the square footage, whatever size we want, and we could define it as habitable space, as we currently do in our ADU. All right, so that's the current situation. The state has specified it. In the by right, it's gross square footage, it's 900. We don't have any flexibility on that. We as a town must accept that. Where we have some flexibility is if the town decides to allow second ADUs, we have flexibility there. We could state it as we currently state it in our ADU, which is no longer in effect. It's habitable space, and you don't include those items. So that's the current situation. I hope that helps.
It does. So if I understand it correctly, in order to get, if the town voted to include sort of that ADU XL and habitable space, that couldn't be applied to the first ADU. It would only be applied to the second ADU?
That's correct. The first ADU, which is a by right,
Right.
must meet at a minimum, has to meet the state requirements. And we can't change that.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for the questions.
Okay, does anybody have any more comments about that first proposed zoning amendment?
Anyone else when you
Okay,
want to come up and speak to it?
so I will move on to the, should I close the? No. Okay. I'll move on to the proposed, the second proposed amendment to Article 4, Section 4134. Now this does not exclude the second ADU. And again, this is maybe a little bit confusing, but we're trying to align our bylaws with what the state has put down. So we can, as we rewrite our bylaws, and this will go to town election to be voted on, we can exclude the second ADU or include it. So that's why it might seem a little confusing that we're going to be kind of talking about the same thing, but this would be the time that we would be discussing that second ADU. So I will take a motion to.
We don't need it because
So
Yeah,
we don't-
it says the roll call vote is, so we don't.
No,
need
no,
that.
no.
That's if we're
Second.
gonna.
That's if we
Okay.
vote tonight.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so I'll just open the matter up to the board for comment, and this would be commenting on that inclusion of the second ADU in section 4134. Does anybody have any
I have
comments?
no comment.
I did have something that I was kind of walking through scenarios that the town might be presented in having an application for a second ADU, if that is something that gets voted on. And I don't know that they've made allowances for if you use existing square footage in your primary dwelling as your ADU, then that does reduce the square footage of your primary dwelling. So for the second ADU, which can not be any more than half of the square footage, and maybe it would be easier if I gave an example. So if you have a 2,000 square foot house, 2 stories, 900 square feet on the top, 1,100 square feet on the bottom, and you choose to make that top floor a completely separate unit, and that's your first ADU, 900 square feet, that makes your primary dwelling, it seems to me, to be 1,100 square feet. So for a second ADU, it couldn't be any more than 550 square feet. Just trying to like puzzle through different scenarios that might happen. And I guess the reason why I'm mentioning it is because I was hoping that we would have Leanne here to get some clarification on that tonight. If that is in fact the case that it does.
That's in fact the case. That is something I would like clarification on too. Yeah.
Because it could significantly limit the size of the second ADU to almost a point where it's not maybe used in something that people are interested in doing. But that was my only comment on that. Does anybody else have any?
I've just considered some of the unintended consequences of perhaps having, 2 or possibly more ADUs on any given property. There were traffic implications. It could possibly increase school enrollment, which would possibly increase taxes. You know, do we have sufficient infrastructure for a large increase? Should people decide, yes, this is something they really want to do, and we end up with a lot of them? And I think too, another drawback is, you know, it completely changes the character of the town if all of a sudden you go from a town of 20,000 to, you know, 30,000 in a very short time frame, and quiet residential neighborhoods are all of a sudden not so quiet anymore and not so residential. You know, sometimes when things are being considered, you know, you have to think about what are the implications down the road. And, you know, the town of Sandwich, we regulate the size of business signs to keep the charm and the character of the town. But yet, you know, we're gonna let all these ADUs go up all over the place. It just, like, make it make sense. That's pretty much my input.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, I can definitely see the one, you know, for family, aging in place, you have children, you know, that you want to help out, and you put the one in somewhere on your lot, you know, but
I guess my only thought on that is, you know, the fact that it requires a special permit will allow us to look at a lot of those factors to see if it was an appropriate way to go.
right. But I mean, our hands are somewhat tied by it as well, you know, with the bylaws that we have.
On
You know,
the first ADU or the second?
no, I mean on the second, yeah. You know, I mean, probably a lot of them, because, you know, what do we have? Most lots, other than maybe downtown, are at least a half acre. A lot of lots are an acre in town, and that leaves a lot of leeway for a lot of extra buildings.
For clarification, what we're discussing right now is the state has given us the ability, us, the town, the ability to, by special permit, allow second ADUs. We can choose to put that into a bylaw, or we can choose not to. And what happens is we'll vote, decide to move this forward to the Board of Selectmen or not move it forward, and then they would then decide if it gets on the warrant article or not. If we did elect to allow by special permit a second ADU, the current ADU bylaw is not it. It's still on the books, but it's ineffective right now. But we can't enforce, I should say it's ineffective. We cannot enforce it, nor could we enforce it directly by putting this in either. We get the opportunity to rewrite it as where we're headed. So please understand that. It's not simply that you know. So if there's concerns and so forth, we can, as we did previously on the public hearing, we took the comments and concerns and we can write them in there. And I don't want anyone walking away thinking that, you know, all we do is just take the current one, which we cannot enforce because the state has changed the rules, and just simply move it over. We have the opportunity to rewrite it.
Right, and thank you, Jeff, for that clarification. That's a great point. And I'd like to just read, because it's short. So our earlier conversation, we were discussing submitting to the town vote the amendment without permitting for a second ADU. And so what we're discussing now is this one paragraph to be potentially added to the ballot at town meeting. Permitting a second ADU in an effort to meet local housing needs, the owner of real property may apply for a special permit for a second ADU. The planning board shall be the permit grant authority. Sections 1330 and 4130 shall still apply. And so that's kind of what we're trying to get some feedback here from you all and from town voters is, you know, what you would like to see on the ballot for election at for the changes that we're gonna be making to the bylaws. And this is probably, I think, the biggest thing that we would need your feedback on is, how you all feel about these second ADUs.
Okay, it's your chance to come up and talk.
Two now, that's great.
Tom Phillips, 2 Knolltop and 15 West Crossfield. If I hear you correctly, I would say that there are special circumstances, and the state has already said that, it's by right for the first one. But my ask is there are plenty of folks, and the woman before me mentioned where there's needs for elderly parents and caregivers on the same property. So I have an acre in which the intention of, it's a blessing to hear that the by right for 900 square feet is, we don't have to go through, we can do what's right. I have a disabled son who we're looking at, options, and that's certainly one of them. I am with the other gentleman that the 900 square feet is, when you start putting in all the things that you need, it's even hard to build a container home at 900 square feet of full gross square footage. So I would be fully in support and ask your support because, again, it requires a special permit. And I'm one of those folks who would have great justification. Very well, I happen to live next to a civil engineer, so the planning and making sure the impact would be the least and the convenient for the most for the purpose of that land. So, and again, it's just an option, right? If you don't give it to us, then people like me don't have it, right? So I think that's it.
Thank you.
And I wish Leanne was here because there are a million more questions, but I can wait for those.
Who else?
Anyone else?
Come speak.
I agree. You need to keep it in. I hope you will keep it in. And, but to follow up on what you talked about, that you have the option to see, it wouldn't be a protected use because it's gonna come to the planning board and so on and so forth. And so this wording says that it is going to be subject to the same rules as the protected use. But as you pointed out, our old bylaw exists, and it's something that could be rewritten and discussed and have a public hearing and let the public discuss it. So if you keep that the way it is, but eliminate the part about it being subject to the same special permit,
Tell me
protected source.
what line you're looking at?
Okay, where are we? I lost my place.
Effective speaking, shall apply.
Oh, okay,
To the
gotcha,
second ADU.
gotcha. I got it.
Yeah, you found it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that would eliminate the issue that, the chairman, worried about, or said that might be a concern because somebody will only have 500 square feet and they'll have to divvy it up according to the protected use. But we do have a very good ADU bylaw right now that can be, once you start settling in here, take a look at it and say what needs. But, this is Cape Cod, and we've always had cottages and so on and so forth, and people are building these huge houses, and they got tons of people living there, and they got cars and stuff going, so you're concerned about that. But the character of Cape Cod has always been guest houses, and there was always a by right guest house and Sandwich in all of the towns. So it's not unusual to see different buildings on a property. But some of these larger houses, 2-3 stories, they can have somebody upstairs in the middle and downstairs, and one extra parking space is not a lot for people coming and going. And as far as being able to afford it and to pay for the construction, for taxes, the increased insurance, you're not going to see it just grow like that. People aren't in the positions to be able to just build to that extent that you're most people are concerned about the Cape just all of a sudden growing. I think it's a great idea. You guys did a good job. This was really good. I've been waiting for, talking to Ralph about this since years. And I'm glad it's finally happening.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we move on to the proposed amendment to Article 2, Section 2550, which is non-conforming lots. Any comments from the board? Any comments from the public?
So this is a change that is again directed to us by the state. And if you had the opportunity to talk to Leanne, you would have heard her tell you that, you know, if we don't take the action at town meeting to amend our bylaws to accept the state direction, we run the risk of not being able to get grants in the future from the state. So it's important that we as a town consider these and the balance and so forth. So again, this is going to take some lots that are currently joined because they were co-owned and allow you to separate them so that it creates more opportunity for housing to be built to meet the housing needs that we have. Come on up if you got a question.
Well, I think I just want to state that I think the answer is, do you have my name and number still? Name it. Well, Tom Phillips, 2 Knolltop. Yeah, this was the purpose of me joining today to get clarification on this from Leanne. I do have co-joined lots, for those of you in Sandwich, 24 years ago. Just prior to that, they were joined. There are 2 separate addresses. And now the opportunity, so if they stay together, obviously the by right ADU can still be moved forward, but there is a possibility of separating them, and then it's, so I think, am I correct in thinking that she will have clarification at the next meeting on what this means?
Sure, or if you want to reach out to her via email or.
Yeah, she's got an email, and she was going to have an answer and said to come by tonight, so.
Yeah.
And what is, for residents, what's your question?
To see if the
There are
lots
folks
can, if the
listening that
lots
might
can
be
be,
interested.
so, I have 2 adjoining lots.
Mhm.
There is a papered street, that runs, along one side. That's, it's essentially a dirt path leading to the farm in Sandwich, but never been paved. So my backyard is technically 15 West Crossfield. You know, there's a stone marker, but it all appears as one lot, but it is on paper 2 separate lots. And there are further other lots that are owned. They all happen to be owned by portions of the town. I'm the only landowner that has a unbuildable lot, you know, that's taxed, and on, you know, for the tax purposes, it shows up as a separate lot, but for the planning board, it's all one big one, type of thing. So our interest is just have options and see what we can do. Either it's a
So
separate.
your question for Leanne was specific to your situation.
Yes.
How this would apply and what it would allow you to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Anyone else? And, okay, so moving on, the next proposed amendment to the table of contents for purpose of renumbering the table of contents. There's really not any discussion required. It's sort of housekeeping that obviously we're going to have to fix the table of contents as we adjust the bylaws. So at this point, do we want to
Make a motion to close the,
well, or continue the public hearing, or close the public hearing?
do we close it and then reopen it?
So
or do we
if you
continue?
close it tonight, you can't take testimony
Okay.
unless you make a motion to reopen. And if you'd like to continue the discussion, then you would make a motion to continue to March 18th at 6 o'clock at Sand Hill School, 16 Dewey. Please.
What she said.
I suggest that we, you know, you're taking a straw man. I'd suggest we continue this until the 18th.
I agree.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we continue the public hearing to March 18th at 6 p.m. at the Sand Hill School, 16 Dewey Ave.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstained?
Appreciate your input, truly do.
Yeah, we really do. This is great, great participation.
Appreciate yours too.
Okay, so moving on to board discussion, no items to discuss. Deliberations,
We left everything open, so there's nothing to deliberate.
other matters not reasonably anticipated. Okay, seeing,
I want to, just say one thing, great job. As the chair,